on WFLA Now. Feel good and live your best life with Bloom Health Club. Here's Gail Guayardo.
Hi, everyone. We are super excited about our guest today. We're kicking off our show with a popular political commentator turned fitness guru. Rob Smith is a decorated veteran serving our country for 5 years in the United States Army, including 2 tours in the Middle East during Operation Iraqi Freedom. He was awarded the Commendation Medal and the Combat Infantry Badge, but now he is making a life pivot. Rob Smith, welcome to the Bloom Health Club.
Thank you so much for having me. So happy to be here.
So excited to have you here. And of course, we always have our digital reporter and lead producer on BloomTampaBay.com, Brody Waddell. And we're excited about the conversation today. So let's talk about this. You are one of the top political commentators in the country. You're known globally, and you decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to pivot and I'm going to focus on health and fitness and coach others.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so, in the political realm, which I operate in for quite some time, still am in there a little bit, but I think that you become so interested in these big things that we can't really change, right? So there's nothing that we can do to really change DC. Like, DC is going to do what DC is going to do. But what we can control, what we can always change is ourselves. We can change ourselves physically. We can change ourselves mentally. We can change ourselves in the way that we show up for the world. And I had gone through so much stuff when I was very deep in the world, not anything bad, but it was just trying to manage your schedule, like trying to manage eating correctly and trying to manage, just drinking enough water and getting enough workouts in and all that other stuff. Like, I was gaining weight. I just wasn't feeling good, all of that. And even though I still operate in that space a little bit, what I realized is that what really helps me be the most successful is when everything is starting from the inside out. When everything is working there physically, that is what pulls everything together.
And I'm so glad, and I think you can correlate, Washington, D.C. of it being its own wheel that moves at its own pace and it does its own thing, and there's not much we can do to control that. And I think that also holds true in the healthcare system today. Yeah. We have incredible doctors and nurses out there, but at the end of the day, you're just a number in that system as well. So one of the things that you can do to take control of your life is to start looking inward and get a handle on it. You and I talked about this. I was 20 pounds overweight, going through menopause, thinking, oh my gosh, I got to hang it up. And really, this is a long journey. This is a marathon that we're in life.
Yeah, this is a marathon. And like we spoke of earlier, you don't just wake up one day at your goal weight or looking at yourself in the mirror like, man, I really love how I look right now. And then you just stop. No, it's almost as if that's day one, because that is the day one of the rest of your journey. And that is a journey. And when you talk about the healthcare system, I'm very interested that you brought that up, because we are now in our healthcare system. Now there just seems to be such a push towards, okay, if we have an obesity problem in this country, well, let's fix this via pharmaceuticals, right? Let's put our young people right now that are having issues with weight and obesity and all that stuff, let's put them on this medication that they'll always be on. No, I think that we need to pivot. I think that we need to start talking about what we're eating. I think we need to start talking about how we're moving. And I think we need to start talking about what things that we can do for ourselves. I was working with a client right now. And the first thing that we did with this particular client, this is a woman in her 60s, okay? And so I said, look, let's get you away from processed foods, and I want to put you on a clean eating journey to start. And there were problems that she was having. She told me, in particular, heartburn, that was so prevalent and just so always there that she didn't even notice that it was there, but it went away. And this was just purely via removing processed foods from her diet, which I thought was such an incredible story.
Yeah, and that's what I love about you, is that you don't come in with like too much at one time. Mm-hmm. You like to make the small changes when it comes to movement, changes when it comes to what we eat. And I love that your message for women like myself that are either perimenopausal, postmenopausal, whatever it is, do not be afraid to start lifting those weights.
Oh, absolutely not. In Gail, like we talked about this earlier, a lot of women are very afraid of weights because they think that, they're gonna wake up one day and they're gonna look like me, or they're gonna look like, The Rock or something like that. And this is what they think is gonna happen. And that is not going to happen unless you are, going completely insane and then eating all this protein and all this stuff. But what happens with women is that they tend to focus more on cardio, and they think that just because they get, a whole lot of sweat and they're running or they're doing their spin classes or whatever, that they're going to drop the weight, and then they struggle, they plateau, right? And then as soon as they pick up those weights, and I'm not talking about, knocking back 100, 200 pound weights and doing the bench. I'm talking about your woman, pick up 10, 15, 20 pound weights, do a lot of reps in an intense period of time, you will start getting that leaner, muscular, yet still feminine look that you're looking for.
I like that. Everyone sitting here at the table today, including Brody, he's a journalist. He's worked the crazy hours. I've worked the crazy hours. You work the crazy hours. But you don't have to be in our industry to know what it's like to be a rat on a wheel. And I think along the way, and it's happened, I can't speak for you, Brody, but you start to get run down and you don't function like you're supposed to function. And sometimes subscribing to what you're talking about, Rob, is the only way to get through life.
No, it is. And look, there have been very, very intense periods of my career in the political world where, let's say I'm out on the campaign trail, or, I'm doing the college lecture circuits, and you're here, there, everywhere. You literally, I've woken up in hotel rooms and don't even know what city I'm in, right? And so the only way that you can keep yourself on baseline is if you have rules in terms of what you're eating, in terms of if you are going to indulge in alcohol, how much you are to indulge in alcohol, and also what kind of workouts and what kind of movement are you going to get while you're on the road or while you're in these really intense work periods, right? And what I found is that when you have those rules, when you set them up and you go by them, you will execute more, because when you're in those periods, and those periods, Gail and Brody, those periods as well, and I'm in kind of one of those periods right now, everything needs to work. And that includes the health and fitness. Even if that is not your industry and field, no matter what you are doing, the health and fitness is going to allow you to bring your most successful self to work.
Everything else, it's like the foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have 3 tips that kind of jumpstart. And the first one is to tap the brakes. And I know this is a very difficult one, but to tap the brakes on too much alcohol.
Yeah. So my, you
live in Florida, right?
Yeah, I live in Florida. No, trust me. When I first moved to Florida, and I've been here about 3.5 years now, you can move to Florida and every day can be Saturday if you let it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the problem.
Look, every day can be Saturday if you let, you can be on a boat on Tuesday. You can be throwing back those White Claws and all that. So my alcohol-free journey started going on, it'll be 6 months next week. And the reason that I stepped back from alcohol was that it was affecting primarily my workouts. It was affecting my recovery. I wasn't achieving the body that I was working hard for, because I was always working out in the gym. I was always doing either my Soul Cycle or my classes or my lifting and all that stuff. And when I started educating myself about alcohol, I learned this. When your body, number one, it just is a poison, and that is not a judgment. It just is poison, right? So this is not me judging alcohol. But your body has to process and fight that alcohol before it processes anything else that you put into your body, right? So if you're drinking and doing the nachos or the pizza or the buffalo wings and all that stuff, you're going to gain that weight.
Oh, yeah. I read a great book. It's called Quit Like a Woman. And it really kind of talks you through real time what alcohol is. And it is a poison. The next thing where I think is also very easy to do, especially here in the Tampa Bay area with all the amazing restaurants, is to get in the habit of eating out.
Yes.
But that's when you lose complete control of your quality of the foods that you eat and the calories.
Yeah, you lose control. And here's another thing about eating out, Gail, because I love to eat out at restaurants. I really do. And I've probably been doing a little bit too much of it lately. So I need to start practicing what I'm preaching. But here's the thing about eating out at restaurants. Number one, what I advise people, I have clients that I have one client that is a CEO right now, and this person travels a lot, and he has to eat out at restaurants because he has to entertain clients. So what I tell him is that if you have to be at a restaurant, I want you to stick to a protein, a vegetable, skip the bread basket, and skip dessert. Okay? That's fundamentally okay. And then also, even if you're doing all of these things, your food can be cooked in oils that you don't know about. It can be cooked in a lot of butter. What I found, honestly, is that I'm a dairy-free person, and the cheese and dairy is snuck into everything nowadays. Yeah. So it's really, so a lot of that stuff is there. But your best bet is always to eat at home. You have more control of what you're eating. You have more control of your portion sizes. It's also, you're cutting calories. And look, in this economy, it's a lot cheaper.
Yeah, it's a lot cheaper. Brody, you come on the show and cook for us on Bloom.
Yeah, I love cooking.
Yeah, he's a really good cook.
What are you cooking out there, Brody?
I make all kinds of stuff, man. The last thing I just had was fruit pizza that I made on there. That was so good.
Fruit pizza?
Yes.
Okay,
so
what's
it's like a
what's on this
dessert that's
pizza?
kind of healthy. Just
Yeah.
whatever your favorite fruits are. And then I mix like Greek yogurt with a little cream cheese to put on top of it. And I mean, you can make the crust a little healthier, but I like the classic big sugar cookie. You know what I'm saying? You put that on there. If you have one slice, it's okay. You can't have too much. But I'm like you. I mostly like to eat meat and like vegetables and stuff like that. I mean, I love dairy. I'm not going to stay away from that. But that's really like what does it for me. But I
was going to say, it kind of falls into your 80-20 rule. I mean, you can have a little bit of something.
You Gail, look, you have to. You have to, because when you get in these periods where you're trying to be so strict and look, like I'm going to go on a little bit of cut. I got a magazine cover shoot. I just want to look at like the best possible version of myself. So I'm going to go on this like 10-day cut and everything will be pretty much 100, but you can't live like that. You cannot live like that, because what's going to happen is you're going to fall off and then you're probably going to gain even more at the end of the day. So the 80-20 rule is 80% of the time I'm dialed in on nutrition. I'm trying to, avoid the fried foods. I'm trying to avoid the desserts and all that other stuff. But then that other 20%, if I want to have that creme brulee, I'm going to have that creme brulee. I was in Paris at a restaurant, I believe called Les Escargots, which was the best creme brulee I've ever had in my life. And there was no way that I was passing up creme brulee in Paris.
Of course.
No, you can't do that. You just can't do it. Let's talk about your time in the military, because you said that discipline and what you learned there and the lessons have carried you into what you're doing today.
Yeah, it really has. So my time spent in the military was probably the most foundational period of my life. From 17 to 22. So I went in the military right out of high school. Okay. So I'm from Akron, Ohio. At that point in time, there weren't a whole lot of options. And I was also ended up being the first person in my family to go to college or whatever. Right. So before all that, I went into the military at 17 years old. And even with the fitness thing, I was heavy when I went into the military. I was kind of a heavier kid. So the physical fitness and the training and all that stuff whipped me into shape. But it taught me a couple of things. First of all, it taught me discipline. When you show up, when you have to be to a place when you say you're going to be there, because you have lineups in the military about 3 times a day. You have to be there at 5 p.m. It helps you be on time. And it's very interesting when I transitioned out of the military and got into the civilian sector. Everybody's always late all the time.
Yeah.
And so I'm always the one that's like 5 minutes early, because I go by the rule, like if you're on time, then you're late. So I realize everybody's late all the time. So there's that discipline. There's also a love for country. I do love America. I love this country. I always will. I believe that this is the only place in the world that no matter what you look like, no matter where you were born, no matter what your family did or did not do, you can make something out of yourself here. This is why everybody on the planet wants to be here. So I think that it's, something that you should take advantage of by living in this country.
I agree. You wrote a book.
I did. Always a Soldier. And Always a Soldier is really about what it is like to be an infantry soldier, not only in basic training, but also during my deployments, in my deployment to Iraq for just under a year around the initial invasion. And when you're young, and you're that young, I believe I turned 21 in Iraq. We're not going to talk about how long ago that was. But I turned 21 in Iraq. And when you're that young and you are faced with life and death, because I was in firefights, there were some soldiers in my unit that were lost. And so you really think about not only the impact that you want to have on the world, but also the fact that, any of us can go at any moment. And as a 21-year-old, you're very young to get that message, but that's a message that sticks with you.
I like that. I'm glad you brought up I love my country because you think about it, I'm only 2 generations removed from a woman that rolled cigars in West Tampa and a grandfather who built a dairy farm from the ground up. And I do think there's so much opportunity, and sadly, and I don't want this to get political because that's not what Bloom Health Club or Bloom is about. But I do think that, we've kind of lost hope.
Yeah.
And really, if we can rewind it a little bit and kind of talk about what you were just saying, like you fighting for our country, what you're able to do here, maybe look at this country through a different lens, people would be a lot happier.
I think so. And honestly, that's a lesson that I learned, being in the political field as deeply as I was involved in it. I'm still involved in it, and I know people that are in it, and that's great. But I think that we spent so much time as Americans, but just in this country in general, I think that we spent a lot of time worried about things that we fundamentally can't control. Okay, so we can't control these things. We cannot control what's going on in DC. We cannot control what they're going to do with taxpayer money. We cannot control any of these things. What we can control is ourselves. We can control, number one, what we put into our mouths. Number two, we can control how much we're moving. And if you have a population of people, there are 350 million plus people in America. And so if you have people that are focused on how we can bring the best possible version of ourselves to this world, then you have a society that's filled with a lot of people that are just trying to do their best. Then you can come together and you have a collective society of people that are operating on higher levels. And I think that slowly but surely, that's the place our country is getting to.
How will you help people do that? Tell us a little bit about your business and how it's structured. Do you work with people virtually?
Yeah.
Do you work with them one-on-one?
Yeah. Rob Smith Fit is purely virtual. Okay, so I have clients from all across the country, and I do 2 different things. So I do group coaching where we'll get a group of people and we'll have a Zoom call once a week for an hour. And so with the group coaching, what we do is we'll focus on one different topic a week. One week we'll talk about, okay, what do you do when you go out to restaurants? How can you eat healthy when you go out to restaurants? 1 week we'll talk about what is healthy snacking, because I do not believe that snacking is in itself inherently unhealthy, but sometimes the things that we snack on are unhealthy. I had a client that thought that I don't know, can I say brands?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, she thought that Sun Chips, and Sun Chips are delicious.
They are delicious.
I love Harvest Cheddar.
Yeah, they're great, right? But this was her idea of a healthy snack, so I had to tell her, no, do not eat these as a healthy snack. Like, it's not.
That's part of your 20%.
That's part of the 20%. Yeah, it's not the 80%. I love that. So that's the group coaching. And then one-on-one is a little bit more specialized. So one-on-one, instead of being in a group setting for that hour, I'm with you one-on-one for an hour once a week. And we're putting you through. I am not a personal trainer. This is not like, personal training is not my thing. I direct people to go to actual personal trainers. What I direct people to do is to be healthy in their lifestyles and to work with whatever their personal schedule is right now. I have a client that is a nurse. She has a very pretty much set 3 a.m. to, I think, 3 p.m. schedule. That's different than another one of my clients who is an entrepreneur who is in a different city 3 to 4 times a week. So what I have to work with him on is how he's dining out at restaurants. We're doing a little intermittent fasting with him. So I'm like, okay, if you're flying into these cities, get yourself till 2 p.m., then have a big meal at 2 p.m. And then if you have to go to these functions later on, just nibble on the appetizers, have yourself a little club soda cranberry if you're trying to avoid alcohol. And if you get a club soda cranberry, then nobody's going to ask you whether you're not drinking, because they're just going to think you're drinking a vodka cranberry.
Yeah, I like that. I'm glad that you talk about the one-on-one, because I think wherever you are, if you're listening to us, if you're watching, sometimes it's worth, if you can't do it for the long term, just to stop and take a deep dive into your health. Because I think so often we're just 15 minutes at the doctor's office. Like with me, Brody, and I've talked about this a lot. I have hypothyroidism.
Oh, me too.
And it was always just more of this prescription, just kept raising it and raising it. I didn't know that too much cardio is terrible for hypothyroidism. I didn't know that gluten was the worst thing that you could do, dairy, like all of these things, these small changes made a night and day difference of how I feel. And I thought I was doing everything right, but I was really working against myself. And I think if you just take the money that it cost, set it aside. I know times are hard right now, but that 1-2 hours that you pay for could be the game changer in how you feel and your productivity.
No, it really is. And I think that, in building Robsmith Fit, and the reason that I wanted to build this up, particularly with the coaching, is that these are things that I've learned through doing over the better part of a decade, right? So I've dropped about 50 over the better part of the decade. And so I know the yo-yo. I know what it is like to have been a formerly heavy person that lost the weight. I know what it's like to make poor choices at restaurants or to have a really busy schedule and all that stuff. So I know what that stuff is like. So you're able to connect with people in different ways because everybody's issues aren't the same, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I think community, and however you find community, it does help to have people that you're talking to and that and you're kind of going through it together. Because the more we open up about how we feel and what's going on, because at the end of the day, sure, getting in the next dress size down or getting into the jeans you want to wear is fantastic. But I've learned as I've aged, and I'm way older than both of you gentlemen, that it's how you feel. And it's like how you interact with your kids and maybe one day your grandkids. I think once you get to a certain age, that's what it's all about.
Oh, that's what's the most important. Okay. And look, we all like to, I like to put out the beefcake shots on Insta and all that other stuff. You can follow me, Rob Smith Online or Rob Smith Fit, either one of those things. But fundamentally, when I started seeing my most success physically is when it stopped being about that and it more started being about how I feel and how I'm moving and all of that stuff. Because and people don't believe this, but the vanity as a motivator is only going to take you so far. It really is only going to take you so far if you don't commit to the fact that this is a journey, that this is about how I feel. This is about how I feel about myself as opposed to how other people see me, right? And so I got to that place, and then that was the key that unlocked things. And when I talk to my clients right now, you would be surprised. I have to have this wealth of knowledge just from reading all these books and having lived this and done all this stuff for the past decade, that there is a lack of even kind of like the most basic health information, like the most basic health and fitness stuff. Cooking with olive oil as opposed to maybe cooking with canola oil, right? Just eating some vegetables, the fact that sun chips are not healthy, yes. Just stuff like that.
It's true. I mean, I thought I was doing everything right. And then when somebody picked apart my meal plan, they're like, well, that's buried with a bunch of sugar and, dairy that you don't need. Like, you think you're doing the right thing because everything is, labeled, and it's hard. I mean, even when you're in the business of doing research, it's hard to figure out. It's like a puzzle. Any final questions before we wrap up?
I think you're a great person to ask. Like, how do you balance a little bit of everything together, man? Like, to really do well in your career, on your body, your mental health, like your social relationships. Like, what is your advice to people to balance that?
It is not hard. I think that for me, there is, with me and my fitness, is that my fitness is a non-negotiable. It is the first thing that I do every single morning. And depending on what my schedule is, sometimes my schedule is a little bit more flexible than it is other times, but it has to be the thing that gets done. It's a part of my day, right? It really does have to be. So making your fitness almost like an extension of your job, because then it becomes your job, it doesn't matter what job you're doing. You're on air, you're producing, like I said, entrepreneur, nurse, et cetera, et cetera. So it's making it a part of your actual lifestyle. And for me, when you're trying to balance everything, you really have to take time for you, because we can be pulled in so many different directions with family, with work, with, all of this other stuff, with fitness, where, and that's another thing as well. Like, you have to take this time for yourself as well, because if the entire world is getting all these little pieces of you, you have to leave something that's left just for you.
I love it. You have just been a breath of fresh air, Rob. I really appreciate you joining us, not only on Bloom, the syndicated talk show, but then also coming and being an official member of Bloom Health Club.
Oh, fantastic. I'm an official member. I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
yeah. One day we'll have a t-shirt to give you.
Fabulous.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Well, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.